Chairman Orr walks in, if you would all help us with an ovation when he walks through the door tardy, it would make everybody happy.
Everybody but possibly him. Second half of our Education Trust Fund budget hearings. Had some good presentations this morning from Mr. Fulford and Director Poole. This afternoon we have Chancellor Baker, Dr. Purcell, and Dr. Mackey. So, Chancellor, you have the floor.
I think I'll begin by telling you something that I told the Rotary Club in Mobile, downtown Mobile, and the Rotary Club in downtown Huntsville. What we talk about today would never have been possible without your support. Look, we've gone through a significant transition in a lot of areas, and in particular, the software that we use in financial management. Not just financial, but student and everything else. And we had people that were accustomed to operating one way or the other, or maybe sometimes not operating. But we went through that process over a 2-year period of time. And I know there were people complaining. I heard it. I know there were people complaining to the legislative body. Never one time did anyone from the legislature say to me, slow down, let's don't make it what it should be. And I appreciate that more than you will realize, because oftentimes people think, well, we can go talk to our legislator and he'll take care of that or she'll take care of that. But you supported moving in the direction of being accountable. And today, every one of our schools have records that should be in order and that are in order. They're being audited on a timely basis. And the number of findings have diminished significantly. And I think this is kind of interesting to those of you who keep up with accounting in any way. We actually have a standard chart of accounts, where if you look at one set of books and you look at the other, you can tell what you're looking at. Now, we had some resistance about that, and some folks chose to go somewhere else and work, and some folks did one or the other. The quality of the people that are now managing the financial operations of our school is something to brag about. And I like to brag about it. And I like to let everybody know that we did that in difficult circumstances. You provided the resources for us to do that. And you never did anything but be supportive in that transition. And again, I want to publicly thank you for what you've done. We're going to start, where's Boone? We're going to start with a video. And there's so much we could talk about that is good. and we're pretty well scripted, and I don't swear that I'm going to stick with that. But there's a lot of things that we want to talk about. But ultimately, I want you to think seriously about this issue. I know workforce. I thought that was a senator from Washington, D.C. who never wears a coat.
All you were going to start with was a video. I mean, come on. You want me to rush down here for a video, Chancellor? Good girl.
Well, it's bragging on the legislature.
Oh, okay. Well, that probably doesn't include me, but that's okay.
Well, okay. Let's get to the serious business.
Legislators have been at ground zero with the Alabama Community College system to reignite the very reasons the system was developed 60 years ago. As a result, they've restored trust in a system that was built to last. Our system is the roadmap with the on-ramp to success and the off-ramp to any opportunity a resident seeks.
As the world has changed and evolved, so have community colleges. Whether we see the advent of AI, and we have some of our colleges starting to address that, to actually more hands-on skills, we need to have skills of all sorts to be developed. And community colleges going forward are on the forefront of developing and maintaining those sorts of skills.
With notable increases in enrollment, timely audits showcasing unprecedented efficacy, a technology infrastructure that mirrors at every community college, new ways to meet residents where they are, and improved and new facilities, Alabama's community and technical colleges have become the go-to leaders in higher education and workforce training.
We just recruited something called Ultra Safe Nuclear, which won a national award, which is a $250 million investment, which is going to have 200 employees, a minimum salary of $60,000 a year, and it's going to be occupied at the Gadsden Industrial Airport. They educated me on how important workforce was to them and how important it was for the junior college to be located in an area where they wanted to locate. I can't tell you the importance of how much Gadsden State is because there's not a measuring stick, but I can tell you if there was, it'd be off the chart.
We have the attention of the state and the nation, and we know this would not have been possible without the support, willpower, and fortification of Alabama's legislators.
Community college is a great return on our investment. Industry want to come where there's a workforce, a trained workforce. Now we're looking at AI that's coming in, advanced technology. You know, workforce is getting more advanced on a day-to-day basis, and we have to be able to have that workforce trained. And if we want to stay competitive as a state, keep our people employed, have a livable wage, we must train people into those areas to where it's needed.
We are continuing to build capacity for what's to come because it matters, not just to the Alabama Community College system, but it matters to the legislators who are living the mission in their commitment to fortifying Alabama with a stronger higher education and training system. One of the greatest impacts was through a new board of trustees and their sign-off on one ACCS.
It makes it easier for the system office as well as the board to get the information they need at any point in time about any community college or all community colleges. That was a great thing because it sort of also brought us together. It's not like there were 27 community colleges out there operating independently and on their own as it was before this board.
Doing so helps residents seamlessly transfer to four-year universities across the state with the classes that they need to be successful.
And there's no doubt that if it was not for the foundation that Snead laid during my time here, I would not have succeeded as well as I did during my time here at the University of Alabama and now in both of my careers.
Technology and its ability to reach residents where they are is integral to the core of the Innovation Center, which helps improve the expansion of fiber optics and fill much-needed vacancies elsewhere by training workers on their own terms, first online and then in person to demonstrate their skills.
What would have been 3 to 4 weeks, plus cost for each of our employees to go through the training, $500 and up. Skills for Success allowed us to do that in 1 week's time. It's free to us. The very next week, we had employees taking their CDL, and now they're in the field doing what they were hired to do.
Our partnerships continue to expand, from apprenticeships in healthcare and manufacturing and beyond. We are here because it matters.
We are a community college. And as our chancellor is fond of saying, you know, it's in our name. And so if we're not representing the needs, the manufacturing needs, the business needs of our community, the educational needs, then we're not doing our job.
We not only work constantly to change how we do things in order to maintain that relevance with our partners, but we strive to be a pace setter.
As I think about some of the meetings that the Chancellor and I had and some of the things that he was explaining to me that he would like to see happen, I can't think of anything, any conversation that we've had where he has implied, discussed, and said, this is the direction we're going or something I'd like to do that it hasn't happened.
Legislators have made sure that no Alabama resident is left behind.
Welcome to Ingram State Technical College apprenticeship signing. It is the first apprenticeship program offered to the incarcerated population in the country. This is important for the employer because it taps a workforce that's not been tapped recently.
We will continue our bold approach to strengthening our state. Thank you, legislators. Everything we do is made possible because of you.
Thank you. Let me tell you a story, because this is what we work for. One of our schools worked with the Skills Center, the Innovation Center, and established a training program out in the open field, the operation of heavy equipment, which is in high demand. This mother brought her son, who had tried numerous things and had not succeeded, has some autism problems. He goes through the training, dedicated, worked hard, met all the benchmarks of being successful. Before he left the site, the company manager came up and offered him a job and said, son, instead of $17 an hour, we're going to pay you $23 because you did such a good job. That is a beginning of what we have to do. Now, we're dealing with a lot of people who are handicapped by not having the proper education. It's difficult to train a student or an adult who can't manage the proper subject matter, whether it's reading, writing, or arithmetic. You know, basically, that's still the core. You might not know algebra or geometry, but if you don't know those three core things, you're going to be a problem in the labor market. I'd like to tell you that our enrollment has increased because of a deliberate, planned approach. I see Representative Drummond sitting there. Mobile, Alabama is a story that's unbelievable almost. Last year, the enrollment was up over 700 students. This year, it's going to be some in excess of 600 more students. It's simply because there is a plan. There are people who are calling on the schools, and they're demonstrating what they can do at that school. But they're also demonstrating in a school that has been somewhat renovated, reformed, and a lot of skilled training programs have been added. I'm not going to read all this to y'all. I think I believe all of you could pass reading, writing, arithmetic. So I won't read that, but I just want you to know that you have been very, very supportive of our schools. And as we work, we are going to have to find ways to provide education programs beyond what is happening today. I don't see that happening in many instances. We are proposing what we call the road to success, or the road to workforce. And we would like to have every student, as they enter into what we used to call junior high grades, early in education, 7th, 8th, 9th grade, and we can do this. We want to make sure that every student is exposed to the world of work in their community, in the state of Alabama, and nationally. It can be done in many ways as a unit within the core of their instructional program. But we are committed to doing that so that every student can see what it's like, what it takes to fill a job, or be qualified for a job, and what the results can be. We must begin to have students understand what the world of work is really about. Then as they progress, we want every student to have taken either a course that would lead to college credit or a course in skills training that would lead to some form of certification. Folks, today, over 45% of the students who cross the stage and receive a high school diploma have no plan for the future. That's the real serious problem and the core problem, the fundamental issue with the lack of a labor force. And until we fix that problem, we're going to continue to have the problem of a labor force that is not in the working environment. So we are committed to the proposition that we want every student to be exposed to work, to know what it's like, and either go to a course that would lead them to have college credit. The college credit bothers me a little bit, and I don't mind telling you for that. But if they go on and continue getting an associate degree, then that's better. But just having a college credit, they need to pursue some form. You know, today, if you have a doctorate degree in psychology, I don't know what your job's going to be. I have a degree in history. I don't know what my job would be if I started tomorrow. We need to make them aware of the world of work. And before I get through, I want to have some time left for questions and answers. I hope I have answers. But unless we begin to find a way, and we're proposing that we can do that, working with the Superintendents Association in this state and the K through 12 programs. I sit down with the state superintendent and talk through some of this. And I think it is possible to find a way, but we must improve our ability to deliver skills. I watch what's been going on across the state and all kind of committees and people doing this and doing that. And I'd like to see a committee that would maybe find a way to make the teaching of the basic core subjects easier or more productive. But I don't want a committee made up of folks like me. I've been in the education business a long time, but it'd scare me to death if I had to do that. I could have served on one of the committees, but I didn't think I had anything to offer with that. Or you could, maybe my wife's a retired school teacher. She taught the 6th grade in music. I don't think she'd be a candidate. We're going to find a way, because in adult education, we must be more aggressive, we must be more active, and we must tell people, if you will come and take the time, we can speed this up and help you get through learning the basic skills. I tell you the truth, I have a daughter who's a 4th grade teacher, master teacher, teacher of the year. She might know something about what it's like to teach in a classroom, and she could probably make some suggestions. I'm not suggesting that she be a committee, but we want to find a way to expedite the instructional program so that we can convince people to come in and seek an education so they can be successful in the labor force. Now, I can go on and talk, but I'm going to stop, because Arthur, I know, wants to ask me a question.
Thank you, Chancellor. I have one question. What percentage of students that are enrolled in community colleges go to college to go to the next, to the four-year college.
To the four-year degree. Well, you know, we're fortunate in Alabama. Students that come to our school are Alabama students in almost every instance. And then they go on and pursue that. And over 50% of our students go on and take other courses in college.
Any other questions, committee? Chairman Orr?
Chancellor Baker, I wanted to just thank you and your team for your innovation, and use that word liberally with your innovation centers that you scattered around the state, and taking education to where people are and not expecting them to come sit down in a classroom and leave their job or workplace to come get training, but you're meeting where they are, whether it's 2 a.m. over the internet in Bruton or, you know, through the more traditional fashion with getting the assessments to make sure that they are going to meet the certification or requirements to get that certificate or get that credential that they need. So thank you for being innovative, pun intended, and your team to get it out there and not be beholden to the traditional model of education of sitting in a desk for 50 minutes and thinking that's the way to be in the 21st century. So thank you, and appreciate what you're doing.
Well, Senator, and we also have innovative ways of finding people who need a job, finding people that we believe could succeed, and then recruiting those people. But again, it's key to being able to teach programs that are short, that are successful, and available. And that's what we are specializing in the Innovation Center. I think it's a game changer. I think it has a lot more potential than we've developed at this point and as we move along. And, you know, I had someone make a comment, well, do y'all ever talk to business about, and I could have answered yes. In all of our schools, they do that. And I believe I have a list right there. Over 5,000 businesses that we regularly communicate with in the state. So we know what the need is. We know the skills that need to be addressed. And as we move forward working with you, we can change this state. We're better than what we're doing. And we can change this state. We can make a labor force available, and we're going to do that.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Singleton.
Yes, I too want to echo Chancellor Baker of the work that you're doing in the community, not just because I'm the star in your video, but the fact that I think that what community colleges does is a great job in what we're missing. And I just want to congratulate you and the leaders of those institutions that you have out there. I think you have one of the best a group of leaders that are leading our 27 community colleges that we have ever seen in the state in terms of your presidents and your vice presidents that are out there. And I also want to say that the way that you reach out to rural communities and make sure that all those kids in those areas have the same education as kids that are in Huntsville or Birmingham or anywhere else, they get the same education. So I really appreciate what you and your leaders are doing. Thank you very much.
Senator Roberts.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I too would echo that, Chancellor. I see it in Jefferson and Shelby County in particular. I see the creativity that's gone out, the way they're working in the community, the way they're working with corporations. Look, your truck driving simulators that were there for a season, I know they're mobile. We had any number of businesses that utilized that and then showed up to hire people. We see it in what you're doing with some of our other schools in the area, both high schools and below, where there's creativity there. So it really looks to me that what I'm hearing and what I saw in the video and what I hear out and about, that you've taken 27 individuals and then together you're so much stronger by the cooperation. We have many presidents here today, but it's creativity in what you're doing, and you're making our community colleges entrepreneurial in what they're doing, and we're seeing some fantastic ideas in our area, and I just want to thank you for that. Great leadership.
Thank you. Thank you.
This morning, we heard in our presentations a lot about the labor participation issue in the state. You know, we're 5 points behind the nation in terms of average. That's an important issue for our state to move forward. I think community colleges system is key to that movement forward. And so we certainly have been supportive from the budget standpoint, want to continue to do it. But as you have illustrated and articulated, it's a fluid situation. The job demands change. Some of the job demands are not even, we don't even know what they are yet, but making that connection earlier rather than later and giving people that encouragement and that hope and that training is important. So we certainly appreciate what you're doing and just want you to keep the pedal to the metal.
Well, we certainly will do that, and I've got a crew that's totally committed to that proposition. And we are also committed to working with K through 12. I think it's necessary that we communicate and we work together to begin to bring about change in that. And then we're going to upgrade our adult education and recruiting in that category as well.
Any other questions for the Chancellor? Well, thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank all of you.
Next up is Dr. Jim Purcell with the Alabama Commission on Higher Education.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's good to be here. Good to see you guys. I've been waiting for y'all for a couple months. We start all getting nervous pretty early. Wanted a little bit to talk about our particular budget, and I have some slides at the end that sort of give you some guidance on what we think are our recommendations for the institutions. We probably will not go in that today unless you want to, but it's in there so you can sort of see what our thought processes were. Well, we had a good year, and we're very thankful for your support. It was, an extremely good year. As you know, we have many partners that worked to have a FAFSA completion initiative that was quite successful. We have an All in Alabama initiative, and we have state-sponsored financial aid that has all made some significant differences. For financial aid, it becomes important because it became a graduation requirement for K through 12. So a lot of us partner together. As you see on the list here, a lot of colleges, universities participate and work to make sure it was a success. And the big thing was there was federal aid that was left on the table for people to go to college, community colleges, and short-term credentials too. We left $67 million in 2021. So did the intervention that you guys helped fund make a difference? So we do know from the national literature that 92% of seniors who completed a FAFSA do enroll in college. And here is the answer, drum roll. Well, we had $66 million that we threw our way in 2021, and we actually did much better, only left $54 million. And then the second year of the initiative, we only left $50 million. There's still $50 million left for us to gather. But the nice thing about it is, as we talk about return on investment, this costs, just particularly in our office, costs about $500,000 for some of the software applications that we support with the people at the universities and at the high schools, helping people fill out the application. But it produced an increase of $13 million in student aid. So to me, that is a fundamental good investment of state dollars to leverage others. Now, there's 4 states that took the plunge and went for a FAFSA completion requirement, and this compares the states. And you can see that Alabama actually had the biggest gain. We went from 34th in the ranking of states to 9th, where the other states, some were ahead of the game already and moved a little bit, but we actually made the greatest distance. And in the first year, we had so many things to fix, and we ended up ranking in increase in that particular year. We were first in all the categories. We had more low-income people fill out the application. High minority really did well out in the town and the rural areas, which is very hard, and a lot of the states have been really interested in our approach because of this. We're only second in the cities because Alabama, we haven't done cities much, so we sort of didn't know how that worked, but we're getting better at it. But if you compare the counties, I think this is the most important thing for us to see. The map on the left shows where we were a couple years back, and you can see there was only a couple counties that were in the green, which was a big additional funds for students. And on the right, you see so many more counties that had participated. But notice a couple. Barber County, which actually has lots of poor people, only 25% of the kids filled out a FAFSA prior to our intervention. And in the first year, 86% did, which is a triple amount. And it reminds me of my wife and I worked in many states. As you all may know, I've wandered around a bit before I came back to God's country. And when I was in Georgia, she was a counselor at the high school and talking to a kid that had problems, and she wanted to get some advice from one of the teachers, seasoned teachers, and she asked, well, tell me about Joey, because his issues are kind of big. And the teacher said, honey, don't you worry about that child. We've had problems with his family for generations. And sometimes what's happened is sometimes the local folks really sort of know these kids, they know their families, and they don't give them hope. And what we've done is we've been able to work with Alabama Possible, the community colleges, the counselors, career coaches, to make sure these people understand that there's opportunities. And we send a direct communication by a guy named Ron in my office. And Ron probably has the most famous signature other than Governor Ivey's right now, because he sends them communications. Here, make sure you fill out a FAFSA. The opportunity is there. And then congratulations. And if you've got that, then you may qualify for this scholarship. So there's a lot of stuff that we do to make this happen. You'll see these other counties double. Choctaw County doubled. And what's cool to me is in the second year, each of those counties had a greater participation, which sort of means we're starting to change the culture within those schools and within those communities, helping people with the American dream when they need the help the most. And there are great benefits. More students now apply, but it did increase all those things. But the big thing is enrollment. In the first year, the community colleges had a 17% increase in student applications and yielded about 7% in student enrollment. And it really is that first-generation student, that population that hadn't gone to college that we worked for. And then in the second year, we worked harder to help mitigate that 10% difference between application and going to college, and did some communications in the summer. Now, even though that is great stuff, this year the federal government decided we're going to change the rules. We're going to change the rules for how to do a FAFSA, and it is supposed to be simpler. And the only thing is simple about it is that they went down from 108 questions to 36. But the 36 really changed and moved the cheese for all of us. Yes, the importing income data for tax records will be easier, but that's because they're going to go and pull it from your ID, from your IRS records, and that means that the parent has to participate. And then they decided, well, let's have the students have an application with a password and everything, and then a parent to have an application. So now we're dealing with two applications. The hard part is for Alabamians is in this thing, the new formula emphasizes wealth instead of cash flow. And what happens is if you own a small business, you may not qualify for the Pell anymore. You may have to borrow against your business. If you're a farmer, you may disqualify because you have a wealth of land, but you may not have cash flow, so you'll have to borrow against it. So a lot of these changes are going to make a big difference in our state. And then the problem with implementation, the federal government has not been very good at doing change this administration so far, and this thing normally starts October 1st, and now they said it may be until mid-March before we actually get any understanding of whether the students filled out the application right. So the FAFSA completion initiative is on progress. We've asked for a slight increase there. The FAFSA completion initiative follows with something called All in Alabama, and that's just to get everybody that's been to college and retained and stay in the state, mostly at the universities, because the good news about community college graduates, if they graduate, they will stay. So we actually retain about 75 to 85% of those students up to 5 years in the state of Alabama. So it is a good investment. At the same time, at the bachelor's level, we only keep about half. But those particular jobs generate greater revenues and things, so we need to retain them. So we have an effort on that. Then we have Recall Alabama, which is where we're actually identifying bachelor's people that aren't found in our workforce and contacting them out of state and letting them know about opportunities 4 jobs in their major. And then the final thing, which was funded by you all last year, is the Reengage Alabama, which is to help students who have stopped out to go back to college, either at the community college or university, so that they can be more gainfully employed. So all those things I've identified here. We've got a nice little website, and I'll show you the graphical thing. And it's not a video, but it does have movement. So Alabama is calling. There are great opportunities there. There's the All in All initiative where we contacted people about job opportunities in their major. There's the Reengage. It's the newest initiative. We have $4.5 million allocated for students who can go into high demand, high wage jobs, and we'll help fund them to go to college. $3,000 a semester at the university, $1,500 at a community college. And then the next thing is about student financial aid, and this is the only bummer thing that we have, and that is our aid programs. And I want to mention this because if you look to the one on the right, you see a bunch of red bars. That is, we didn't have enough money for all the demand for those particular aid programs. Some of it we ate out of the AIC budget that is rather small compared to the other guys that speak today. But we're going to ask your support for those. The other thing to keep in mind on aid is Alabama is at 3.2%. We have a smaller portion of financial aid for our folks going to college, even though we have high tuition. Alabama's 8th in the nation in tuition, and we are pretty far down in subsidizing that. The new thing that y'all have put forward is the Student Horizon database. It's a Student Right to Know Act kind of thing so that we can help people pick which college or community college and university to go to. And this is sort of some of the draft information here. We'll be working with the campuses to finalize this in the next couple months. It's not due to you guys until October, but we're going to have it done fairly soon. So you'll have this page where if you want to know about admissions, you can go there. If you want to know about University of Alabama Huntsville, you can sort of see what their admissions requirements are, how much they cost, where they're located, and also you can compare institutions if you want to do that there. Now this is in-state tuition and how they compare tuition and fees. Alabama, like I said, has very high tuition compared to other states. This way you can pick the schools you think you want to go to and compare to them more precisely. And then you wanted to have information on the military, so this is the website for that gives salary, wages, and things like that for them and what their requirements are. So all that is good. The big thing is most of the stuff that we produced already is public knowledge, more or less. It's federally government required information that is in the public realm, but we do want to work with the campuses to make sure that everything is in good order before sharing with the masses. So here is our budget request. We are asking for $99 million. And it actually represents a 35% increase over last year. And you're going, what? How can y'all ask for 35? You know the number's got to be a lot less than that. And the reason is because we've been funding a lot of these initiatives, these initiatives with one-time money. So they've all been in supplemental. So the Alabama National Guard has had a big supplement every year, and we're going to need it to be put over into regular money, because all ongoing expenses should be on the ongoing budget. The Reengage Scholarship is fully funded out of one-time money, and I'm recommending that you give us a supplemental again for this, and then to write everything and put it on the right bucket and fund it again on the ETF side so that we can start offering these initiatives to people in the fall rather than starting it in the spring. The Best in Bryce Scholarship is a scholarship that comes through our budget. It earmarks funds specifically for initiatives in Marengo County and in Decatur, Alabama. And this is an ongoing initiative that helps onboard people with math and science to live in those communities. But if it's going to be a continuous thing, we really need to put it on a continuous budget cycle. Deferred maintenance, you had $5,000 in supplemental last year and then $5,000 in ETF. We're suggesting it all go on the ETF side. And then outcomes-based funding, if you really want it to be something that's continuous, it needs to be part of the budget, which should always be on the ETF side. So that's why we're asking for those changes. We do have about $800,000 in reengage in addition to the scholarships that we're asking to help the campuses do the things they need to do to recruit our adults back into the workplace. And that money would be distributed to the campuses. We would just hand out the checks. We had a lot of assumptions for our budget, and the big thing here, we're just asking for 5% for some of our scholarships, an increase in a certain amount of our scholarships and moving some of them over to the ETF side. SREB, we've asked for an increase for the last couple years. We are the entity that has it, but it is actually a K through 12 higher ed, community college, pre-K activity, and our budget has had to absorb their increases because they raise prices just like the multinational corporations, and we need a good 29% increase to cover that rather than letting us try to address it. We actually get them to cut us a break every year, but it doesn't look good to me for a state to do that. AGS STARS is the transfer system. We've tried to upgrade that, so we want an increase there. And AKEEP is the group that Alabama Korean Education Economic Partnership. They have been working hard to bring us math and science teachers from Korea. They have a large glut of math and science teachers, and they can help us, at least in the short run, with our shortage of those teachers in the schools. And we are asking for a reinstatement of the HBCU consortium. I know that you all funded HBCU Cares last year, and I think there's probably room for both. They do different things. The consortium is more about training faculty and staff for certain things, and the HBCU STARS is more about the research, establishing relationships with institutions in state and out of state. But I do believe there's a place for both. The other thing that I really need to ask you about is this 9.4% increase of our just general operation and maintenance. And I do this out of request for fairness and equity for AIC. And that is, these are the 5-year average increases from other entities in the ETF for operation and maintenance. You notice how big the O&M costs are there? And if you scroll along and you go down to the bottom, during those 5 years, ours was only 8%. That barely covered our raises for the employees, which were mandated by the legislature. And overall, all those other entities combined had a 30% increase. What we've been doing to survive is we're offered 3% charge against the pass-throughs that come through our office, and we use those funds to supplement the activities that are eaten up by the fact that O&M has not kept pace. And with that, that's all I have to say about the AIC budget. I do have slides on how we determine the needs for the institutions, but that can be done at a different date or at your leisure.
Thank you, Dr. Purcell. Any questions by committee members? Representative Collins.
Thank you, Dr. Purcell. I had been hearing about the FAFSA issues at the federal level. How is that going to affect if you're not even starting that process till March?
Yeah, they had an article the other day, or maybe it was today, Wall Street Journal said that the applications were down 50% all across the country. I mean, it's such a government mess up that it's crazy that they thought through that. And a lot of us projected that might be a problem when they started to roll it out. And to me, the fact that you're having 2 applications, one of the rules is that if you're in a divorced family, that the person who makes the most money, the husband or the wife of the divorce, is the one that has to apply for the application. And that may not be where the student is living, may not even be in the same state. So there's all kind of just weird things that's out there. And then just the processing, they didn't put it together well, and it sort of is kind of clunky. We do have Oracle on our side doing our part, but we have to get it from the federal government first, and they have held on that. They're not going to give us any information until March 15th at the earliest, so we are concerned too.
Well, we've been seeing such steady increases in that, which I think is really helping our students in affording higher education. So if we're this late in that process, what are you anticipating for this next fall?
Well, all of our partners have chatted about how to emphasize real hard a big push between now and the end of the year. They can still apply right now. It's just that they won't know whether they filled it out right until middle of March, which is kind of crazy. So we are pushing that. We've asked for maybe some additional alliances. I talked preliminarily with the librarians. We may have a workshop for them because a lot of times people don't have access to the internet or something, and perhaps the libraries could have resources there and also use their facilities for meetings to train the community and adults on how the FAFSA works. So that's in the process. So we are trying to add additional partners.
Other questions? Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next, we'll hear from Dr. Mackey, State Department of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's good to be here with you all this afternoon. I have a couple of folks with me, too, I want to recognize. They're giving you a handout there. I promise you I'm not going through the entire handout, but it'll be good for you to have it with you. Well, I do have one guest with me this afternoon, Tracy West, who represents District 2 on the State Board of Education, is the Vice President of the board. As y'all know, the governor serves as president of our board, and then a member of the board presides in the absence of the governor. And of course, the governor's rarely able to stay with us for the whole day, but Ms. West is with us. She hails from Auburn and represents, again, District 2. And then we had a couple of other board members who had scheduled to come, but due to some family illness and things, were not able to join us today. You have the book that you have before you has the slides up front. I'm going to go through some of these slides, and then behind that, what you have are some legislative reports. They're reports. The reports are reports you already have gotten electronically, but we wanted to print and give you a copy of them. These are dealing with the numeracy and literacy acts and those sort of things. Then we also have some other things in there that are more recent. It'll be good reading. I won't promise you that it's the most intriguing reading, but it'll be good reading for you maybe to keep in your offices. I also noticed as I get started, Dr. Purcell moved a lot of stuff from his supplemental cup to the regular budget cup, but he didn't move anything back to supplemental. So whatever vacancy might have been created, we will be glad to take it. We do not care which budget it comes from. We just want the cash. Achievement on a whole. I want to start with this just to show you we are doing better. The things that you have put in place, and this body has done a lot for us over the last 6 years that I've served as superintendent, and it's making a difference already. I do want to point some of these out. You may have seen a recent study that came from Stanford University and Harvard. A copy's in here, and then an accompanying New York Times article that was about that study that said Alabama is the only state that has fully recovered math losses before the pandemic. Now, that doesn't mean we're where we want to be, because we already started. Remember, before the pandemic, we were already 40th, and so we want to move up, obviously. But we have recovered our losses, and we're the only state that did that. The most intriguing thing about the study, and they point out Alabama as a leader, and only a couple of other states that followed our lead, that the recovery was led by students of poverty and students in high-impacted schools in Alabama. Most of the states that have seen pretty good recovery, what's happened is their affluent schools have led that recovery. In Alabama, we actually saw the reverse, that our affluent schools recovered, but their recovery was not as dramatic as our most economically disadvantaged schools. So we're very proud of that. And why would that be? Well, that's because our model is we invest where the greatest need is. So for reading, for instance, we put reading coaches, we put our regional staff into the schools that are we start with what we call full support schools, the lowest 5%, and then limited support schools, the schools just above them. So we put the most resources in the schools that are most challenged, and it's working. It proves that it works. We do have the lowest chronic absenteeism in the United States 2 years in a row. We're pleased with that. We were 5th in the nation. This just came out last week, 5th in the nation of number of new National Board Certified teachers and 11th in the total NBCTs now. So that's 11th, but remember we're competing with some states that have a lot more population than we do, like North Carolina and Texas and so forth. We're number 4 now in computer science, number 1 for females in computer science. We're number 5th. We're 5th in teacher turnover, which is the good way, by the way. That means we have less teacher turnover than 45 other states. We're number 16 in the nation in school choice, and we're number 5 in the nation in financial literacy. So you just need to take credit. I know there's always more work to be done. I know that as well as anyone in this room, but I can assure you good work is being done, and it's moving us in the right direction. I want to start now with money. So you see the last column is shorter than the others. I didn't get to listen to Chancellor Baker's presentation, but I got to come in for Dr. Purcell's, and I'm sure they're telling you some of the same things. Federal money is going away. So that last column, even though you all will be deciding, and we'll see tonight what's in the governor's presentation about how to spend the state funds, we know how much state funds are going to be available. And that last column you see is shorter, and it's shorter simply because in FY25, all of our federal COVID funds will be gone. And I'm going to talk a little more about that. So here, you remember we have a tracker on our State Department website. You can go and see how much money's been expended. You can get it down to school district and school, and you can also see specifically every fund. Remember, we talk about 3 big funds, ESSER 1, ESSER 2, and ARPA ESSER, but there are actually hundreds of sub-grants involved in those 3 big federal programs, and we can show each one how they've been spent down. Our ESSER 1 dollars are all gone. They were all spent. The first round of audits of ESSER 1 have been done, and I think I've told you before, but I'm going to say it again. Alabama was the only state that had no audit findings in ESSER 1 expenditures, the only state. ESSER 2 funds have also been spent. The audits have not been complete. We're in that auditing process now, but those funds are finished and they've been liquidated. And then the last piece is the big piece that's left. And you see there, they have to be spent by September 30th of this year and liquidated by December 30th. We'll go back just a minute to show you. The others, the ESSER 2 funds had to be liquidated by December 31st. And again, that auditing process is just now really getting started. Okay, this is our strategic plan in a nutshell. Remember, the tip of the spear is academic growth and achievement, college and career and workforce readiness. I'll go through each of these and the line items with them in a minute. Safe and secure learning environments, highly effective educators, and customer-friendly services. Our motto is every child gets every chance every day, because we believe our job, our moral and ethical obligations provide opportunities for children. We do that for all children. We do that for all children every day. And then these 3 fundamental questions that I remind our staff of all the time when somebody brings us an idea, and there are lots of good ideas out there, and people bring you lots of good ideas. But can the person bringing the idea honestly answer yes to one of these questions? Will it help our students become better readers? Will it help our students be better prepared for success in algebra? Will it help our students become more productive, responsible citizens when they graduate and enter the workforce? If they can answer yes to all 3 of those questions, I generally meet with them. If they can answer yes to none of those questions, I generally don't meet with them at all, and pretty much we try not to spend a lot of time on those other issues. Now, we have to do some things. Obviously, there are things out there like we have to buy tires for school buses too, but in general, we want to focus on these 3 main priorities. Let's go to this, a little bit about our teacher workforce. We have now 21,000 teachers letters trained. You remember I've talked about that year after year. The Literacy Act requires us to train teachers in K-3 or actually when we do it with pre-K too, we work with the Department of Early Childhood to train all of our teachers in what's called language essentials, language, I'm not going to say it right now, letters, language essentials for teachers of reading and spelling. We have 21,000 teachers trained. That is a nonstop issue because every year we get new teachers. The new teachers have to be trained. We did look at, had great partnership with some of my friends here in the room to talk about letters training students in college, so they would come out letters trained. But actually, Dr. Louisa Moats, the writer of the letters program, we had a conversation with her, and she recommends that not happen because the program is designed as a professional development for teachers in service. So instead, we've worked with the colleges of ed to get some kind of pre-letters training in place, which, by the way, the State Board of Education will vote on in March. They have to vote twice to adopt rules. Remember, our rules are that the board has to vote twice. When they finalize those rules in March, I have no reason to think they won't, because the first time they voted, it was unanimous to approve the rules. Then it will become it'll become part of our rules, not really statutory, but every higher ed institution starting next fall will have to implement these higher standards for teachers of reading. Mr. Chairman, yes, sir.
It's just to clarify that. So I've heard a complaint about the fact that teachers coming out of the College of Education are not letters trained. I think I heard you just say we don't want them to be letters trained.
Yes, sir.
We want them to be what?
So we want them to be trained in the science of reading, and we want them to come out on day one able to teach reading using the principles of the science of reading. Letters is also based on the science of reading, but the letters program is developed so that you do it like a teacher goes and takes a lesson, and then they take that lesson back to their classroom. And that's why it's really not easily applicable in college. We actually had 2 colleges that have tried it, and they've had some success with it, but it's hard to complete letters because they don't have their own classrooms to go back and forth and, for lack of a better word, practice with. Now, again, we talked to Dr. Moats, who developed the program. It's owned by a vendor now, obviously, but one of the things is they are working on a possible college version of letters. It has not been released, but if that gets released, then I think we'll jump on that immediately and try it. We'll probably be back here asking you for funds to put that in all of our colleges of ed.
So what are our colleges doing now?
So right now, what we've done is we had a task force. We worked with 2 outside groups, a group called the Pathway, the Path Forward, and also the Barksdale Reading Institute, put together a higher ed task force with their expertise and wrote new academic standards for our colleges of ed. That came to the school board in November. The board, as I said, they voted on in the March meeting to put it out for 45 days of public comment, and then in March, if the board approves that, it'll be codified. And so the same principles that letters is based on will be required in our colleges of ed. Now, to clarify, I'll clarify by making it more muddy, Mr. Chairman, and I apologize for that. You all already put in the Literacy Act, it says the colleges of ed have to do that, but it's just like one statement. It doesn't say what that means. So what we've had to go back and write pages of specifically this standard, this standard, this standard, this standard have to be taught to every prospective teacher of reading, and that will be in place for this coming fall.
But in the current academic year, we're still all over the board?
Sir?
In the current academic year, we're still all over the board, or there's no organization as far as what we're talking?
Oh, no, sir. So even doing this work, I would tell you that almost every, if not every, one of our universities, public and private, they're already teaching the new standards that'll be law in the fall. So you know, we've been in development of those things. They already know what's out there, and they've changed their curriculum. They have ditched the bad textbooks that the Barksdale State they need to get rid of. We've gone back and followed up to make sure the bad textbooks got out. So they're already adopting it, but it'll be law this fall.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. You see these numbers again. Yeah, I have these numbers all for you. I won't just read everything to you all. I want to point out 3 line items here. They go back to a previous slide. So if you look down, these are our requests that we've made known to the governor. But if you look at that third one, the Numeracy Act, so $23,820,000, that is the difference between what we are paying now with federal funds and what we will need from the state to continue our summer math camps and our after-school programs, and additional math coaches. Remember, every year you're stepping up. We've got over 200 math coaches this year. This is the first year that we've hired math coaches under the Numeracy Act. I'm going to come another time. I'd like to come to both committees and show you some really good data we have on the pilot program we did with math coaches using federal funds that precedes the Numeracy Act. It's really good data. It shows that it works. But for now, $23 million is what we're going to need. We've had extensive conversations with the governor on that. Another $1 million in AMSTI, because remember, the math coaches that go into full support or limited support schools are supported not by the Office of Mathematics Improvement, but by AMSTI, the way the bill's written. And then ARI, about $36 million, and then the K-3 reading coaches, about $24 million. So you add those up, it's around $100 million of federal funds that are going away that we have asked the governor to replace those funds. And again, those are for classroom coaches, professional development, summer reading and math camps, and after-school programs. We did ask for one other new line item, and that's struggling readers beyond grade 3. This is really important to us. It's about $22 million, and what we're facing, y'all know, we do have students who have already moved to the middle grades, and we have students who will be promoted on good cause exemptions under the law, but still may be reading not on grade level or slightly above grade level. I remind you that there's a cut score, but you all know, you all went to school, and you can make a 69, you can make a 70. In truth, there's not much difference between a 69 and 70, and there's no difference 69 and 70 than there is from 93 to 94. But when you take grade home to mama, the difference in 69 and 70 means more than between the 93 and the 94. So we've got these students who are going to score on grade level, but they're still within a band that they are struggling readers. So that's why we've called it Support for Struggling Readers Beyond Grade 3. That's a new line item, but remember the Budget Act, or previous budget acts, actually stipulate that reading coaches cannot assist teachers or students beyond, above grade 3. And so we do get calls. That's kind of the main thing I get calls for, is how do we get help for middle school. So you'll see that as a new line item request. I'll keep going. Summer reading camps, this is another way to look at that same thing. We had all state money. We had state and federal money. Next year it'll go back to all state money, but we have a lot more students. I want to show 2 slides specifically. This one, actually 4 slides. So look at this. This is our reading camp attendance in 23. So you see the breakdown. We had about 30,000 K through 3 students in reading camps. Most of them first graders. That's a good thing, because we don't want to wait till 3rd grade. We want to catch them early. But look at the growth. On the next side, you see that our kindergartners that came to summer reading camp had over 6% academic growth. That's huge. Our 3rd graders had a little less than 3%. Now, that's not, that's a good sign for us, because these 2 slides together tell us we're catching kids early, and the earlier you catch them, the better you are able to accelerate their learning and get them caught up. But it does tell us also that those 3rd graders who are going to camp are not seeing the necessarily academic growth. We do test them. This year, as you know, we'll be testing them for promotion. So students who go to summer reading camp who are not on grade level will have an opportunity to take the test again at the end of the summer reading camp. We know from last year that between 40 and 50% of the students who came to summer reading camp who were below grade level when they came in, they were grade level or above when they left. Okay, so it's not moving everybody up, but it is getting some of them up. But please understand, the ones that are moving, so they're below grade level, they go to summer reading camp, they retest, and they make the magic score so they can go to 4th grade. That does not mean they are reading Dostoevsky. Okay, they're still struggling readers, but it does mean they promote to 4th grade. We'll still have to follow those students through middle school. Same way with math. We only have about 10,000 students that went to math camp last year, but remember, it's not all required yet. We don't have all of our math coaches deployed, but you see the You see something different with this left side. This worries me a little bit because our kindergartners didn't really take advantage of math camp so much. There were fewer than 1,000. Where they really did take advantage was 4th and 5th grade. But look on the other side. Other than 5th grade, that's an anomaly, you see the exact same thing as the reading chart. The earlier we can get them into intervention, the more likely intervention is to work. So our kindergartners who did come, it's a small number now, about 800, but our kindergartners who did come to summer math camp, they had 10% growth. They're just phenomenal. That's why we were called out in the New York Times. That's the kind of work. But you see by 4th grade, those 4th graders who came, there were more 4th graders, but they only showed about 2.5% growth. The earlier we catch them, the better. Before somebody asked me a question about the 5th grade bar, let me just say I do not know. That is a real statistical anomaly. We had fewer 5th graders, but we did have 1,500. We don't know why they showed such phenomenal growth. That's just one of those things. We'll take it as a win, but we're not really sure what happened there. Kind of looking into that number to see why there's such a big difference between 4th and 5th grade achievement. Other achievements, just remind you, we will this year be implementing the retention portion of the Literacy Act. We know from our 2023 data, we changed tests a little bit in 23 because we adopted new, more rigorous standards aligned to the science of reading. Our old standards were not fully aligned to the science of reading, but we adopted new ones, 23, and they went into place in 21. 23 is the first year they were tested, and so you see we actually dropped about 2 points measure of the students who showed they were on grade level. And I think I don't blame our teachers for that. It's just we used a more rigorous test. And so we're going to have to, you can't change the test because you want to get more people to pass it. You have to use a rigorous test and then see where students are. We'll see this year where that number is. I know everybody's watching for it, but we also looked at our 2nd graders, and we think it'll be a little bit better because our 2nd graders on grade level were actually more like 80%. So hopefully at the end of 3rd grade, they'll retain that knowledge and some more. This is growth for the last 3 years. Since the pandemic, we have grown about 2% in reading, mathematics, and science achievement. Same test, so those are year to year. Those are good comparisons. Okay. Graduation rate looks good. It was a little over 90% pre-pandemic. It did drop. It stayed about 89%. We're working on that to get those students to graduate. We're real concerned about that because a lot of students, older students, disengaged in COVID. Some of them have not re-engaged in the process. But if they don't, I talked last week with the Montgomery County Chamber of Commerce, and their number was much lower. They dropped 10 points. The state average dropped about 2 points, but Montgomery's dropped 10 points to graduation rate. Well, obviously those students are still living in Montgomery, so they're a draw on the system, and so that's why we were with the Chamber of Commerce helping them come with solutions on that. Again, you've seen some of these numbers. I do want to point out that middle one, with about 33,000 students earned credentials in career technical education this last year. You see some increases here. The biggest one at the bottom is for Jobs for Alabama Graduates, and that is, of course, a program we want to continue to grow, and then Career Coaches, a program we want to continue to grow. We now have a career coach serving every high school, but there are coaches that serve multiple high schools, so there's not one per high school. Computer science, Mr. Faulkner's not with us today. He always asks me if that's enough money. Oh, there he is. So they tell me this is enough for this year. They want to keep it at $6 million. But I can tell you that after this year, we are going to be putting something new in place, hopefully. I'm going to be making a recommendation to the board that we follow Code.org's 10th recommendation. They have 9. We meet all 9, but the 10th one is that we require computer science for high school graduation. Now, please, media, that doesn't mean this year or even next year. It's a long runway, but we will be taking that up. The State Board will be taking that up. We don't have a specific proposal from them yet, but the overall goal is that we would require high school graduation. I've had talks with code.org, and our plan is by the end of the summer to have a specific plan in front of the board. Code.org is working with our folks internally to develop that plan. When that happens, members, Mr. Faulkner, we will need more money because we'll be expanding it to lots more students. So not this year, but I'll be back next year. Mental health services coordinators, we talk about safe and supportive learning environments. You see the numbers. We do have one now. In the current budget, y'all funded one for every school district plus every charter school. So no, that's in there. Nurses, we hired more nurses this year. You did a great thing for us in adjusting the nurse salary schedule. Thank you for that. We have 706 school resource officers assigned to schools. I always like to remind you that we do drive 90 million miles of bus routes every year. That does not include junior high baseball. These are not extra trips. These are these are trips to school. 90 million miles, and we serve 123 million meals, which includes breakfast and lunch. You see, we asked for a few increases here. Transportation and fleet renewal, we always ask that they be fully funded. That's a big ask, but of course, you run 93 million miles, you go through a lot of tires, a lot of diesel fuel. So I'm going to not go much into that. Let's see. Our building-based math coaches, as I said, will add more this year, but we have about 200 in the current year that have been deployed, and I think I've shared most of these other numbers with you. The team's contracts now are up to 3,500. They've continued to grow. We think that will slow down this year, that we've kind of hit a ceiling, and we don't have as many more applying now as we have had in the last few years. So it's probably going to stay pretty steady. Mr. Chairman, I'm almost finished, and we'll take questions. I know that.
Well, clarify, I just want to clarify.
Sir.
This is what you requested from the governor.
These are what we requested.
We haven't seen the budget yet from the governor yet.
No, sir.
Thank you.
Have not. These are just our requests. Yes, ma'am.
Representative Collins?
Yes, sir.
On the teams, I know that we've been rearranging a little bit internally, which is great. I think it's great. I think we've had people come from different areas within the state. Do you know the percentage that we're actually reaching from outside of the state?
I do not know that off the top of my head. It's not as many. It's been, I'm going to say, fewer than 100 teachers have come in from out of state to take advantage of the team's contracts. Now, we have had some, but it's not like they're coming by the thousands. Hopefully in time that'll pick up. As you may know, this past year we did a PR program to try to hit our surrounding states. We think that was successful. It's hard to measure because, as you know, we don't get live data because the teachers are not employed by us; they're employed by local school districts, and then so we basically get the data many months later. You all provided money to continue that campaign. There's an RFP process going on now. There's actually a challenge to the process, challenge from one of the bidders, and so it's kind of stuck. Not your fault, not my fault, but it just is. But we will be doing another campaign in the next few months. Most of the teachers were current Alabama teachers who transitioned to the team's contracts. One of the good news stories, though, if I may go a bit further, is that we're hearing from our partners in colleges of ed that math and science, applications for math and science programs are going up pretty dramatically. And so we think that it is having an effect. It's going to take a while to get all those people into the classroom. And then, as you may know, the State Board approved last month the rules for alternative teacher preparation programs to enter Alabama. We have our first one on the agenda for this Thursday's meeting. So we think that this will also, because they can qualify for the team's contracts, and so we think that may help to bring some people in from industry from outside.
Representative Drummond.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, Dr.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
One question on your school safety and SROs. Your ask is $18 million for this upcoming year, correct?
That's correct.
Will that money be distributed similar to what we did in the past? And I'm asking, will any of that go to infrastructure for those schools that may be more at risk?
Yes, ma'am. Well, under our, so let me do a little history here. So we're asking, as I mentioned earlier, my little joke, we don't care if this money comes through supplemental or if it comes through the regular budget. But last year, the current fiscal year, the school safety money all came through the supplemental bill. And I realize there may be a chance that it would come through supplemental this year. In that case, what we propose is that the districts decide how to spend the money. The only thing with SROs is they cannot employ SROs directly unless except under very weird circumstances. And the reason is because, remember, none of our employees are authorized to carry guns, except under certain very limited circumstances. So most of those SROs are contracted with local sheriff and police departments. And I'm going to say most, like almost 100%, if not 100%. We encourage them, do not enter a contract, even with your sheriff, for more than 12 months at a time, because the money has typically come out of the supplemental bill, and we don't want them to get long-term contracts when the money may not be there long-term. So I'm not advocating, just to be clear, that we actually employ SROs. I actually don't think that's a good idea. I think it's better if we leave law enforcement to do law enforcement and we just contract with them. For the other piece you asked about, though, this last year, the way that came through is we do a one-page application. I actually sign every one of them, hand sign, as I say, every one, it's like 150. And so I've actually been reading those. And not that I don't read everything I sign, but I don't read everything as thoroughly. But a lot of the money was spent on a huge amount of the money was spent on metal detectors. Mostly the handheld metal detectors that people are using for like ball games and things. A lot was spent on cameras, was spent on locks, especially electronic locks that can be remotely locked and unlocked, some on fencing, gates, replacing doors. So those kind of general, like hard, you can see things.
A&T funds can be used for that as well, right?
Sir?
A&T funds can be used for that as well.
Yes, sir. A&T funds can be used for that as well.
Representative Faulkner?
Yeah, Dr. Mackey, I was glad.
I'm sorry. I thought you were done. Representative Drummond?
Just the second part of that question. So do you review those contracts? Because I actually agree with you about APOS certified with the sheriffs. Do you review those contracts, or how will that, or is that left up to the system itself? And again, the monies will be distributed in the same way as it was last year?
Well, the first question, I do not review those contracts. Those are between local school boards and their local provider, police or sheriff's office. We don't look at those at all. They don't even come to us to look at. So we don't look at those. If they are spending the money, either A&T money or the supplemental safety money, then they do an application. I read the application, so I know what they're going to use the money for, but we don't actually look at their contracts. Even whether it's they're hiring police officers or they're hiring somebody to put new cameras in, we don't look at their contracts. On the second part, ma'am, that will be up to y'all how the money is distributed. Our recommendation is that those rules stay the same, that the money locals can spend it, but within some bumper restrictions, which have been laid out in the law the last 2 years. Yes, ma'am.
Representative Faulkner.
Dr. Mackey, I was really pleased to hear that you're looking into that computer science and that requirement that code.org has suggested. I saw that earlier. What I wanted to ask you about today is about slide 6, you had the 22 million proposed increase on struggling readers beyond grade 3.
Yes, sir.
And I have had lots of parents in my district, as well as we had a meeting recently with CFOs of school systems, and they said the biggest, and these are people, parents and then educators with boots on the ground, saying that the biggest return and what they needed more money for was reading interventionist. And so is this, when we talk about reading coaches and we talk, they were seeing a dramatic need for more reading interventionists, and the CFOs were saying, hey, this is the biggest thing we're seeing great results from an improvement in. So is that 22 million, does that deal with reading interventionist, or is that, we need a different term?
Well, it could be. It's not. I was looking for that exact number, but so it could be spent on that. But no, when they talk about reading interventionist, mostly they are talking about another program. I may have it in here, called Certified Academic Language Therapist, or CALTS, or Certified Academic Language. There's a P. CALPS.
Yes.
CALPS are lower certified than CALTS, but so those are, there is a request for that in our governor's budget. I'm not sure exactly, and maybe it didn't make this. It's in my big budget. I'll get you the number. But we asked for a big increase in that. We had, this is a big success story. When I became superintendent, we had essentially zero CALTS working in our schools. We couldn't find any. We did have some in the state. There were about 40, but most of them were in private practice. We now have 108. But now these are really highly trained reading interventionists, and we would love to have one in every school, and one in every elementary school means that we need to go from about 108 to close to 600. And that's not including middle schools and so on, then it'd be about 900. So it's a long program. They have to do 600 hours of intensive one-on-one work with children, plus all the other work they do. And that's why we give a CALT. There are 2 line items in the budget, already in the budget. We've asked for some big increases. So one is we scholarship people to go through it because it's pretty expensive. And we scholarship them to go through, and then we pay them a stipend the same as the NBCT stipends once they get their CALT, if they will stay working in a public education classroom. One of our problems is those CALTs can make a lot of money in private therapy, and so we end up losing some of them. But the stipend has been able to retain more of them. So you'll see, I think it's actually in here somewhere, but I don't see it. But I'll get you that number. We have asked for increases from the governor in both of those, both the money to pay for more scholarships, and assuming we'll then get more people, to pay more stipends. Now, you can be a reading interventionist and not be a CALT. Obviously, there's some highly trained reading interventionists, but that's what they're looking for, are those CALT-trained teachers. And I'd second that. We would love to have, again, one in every elementary and middle school. It's just the process. It typically takes them 2 to 3 years to get through the process. I mean, not a minimum. It can't be done in less than a couple of years. And so it's not, we can't overnight turn that many people out, and it's very intensive. And another problem, one of the things you'll see, one of the reasons we ask for a lot of money is we want to support districts. So, for instance, a person who's going through CALT training, they have to spend a lot of time out of their classroom, because remember, they have to do 600 hours of in-person tutoring, basically, high quality, very high quality tutoring. I didn't mean to downplay that. But so they're out of the classroom. We hear from some of the CALT students, because they come through, I meet with them, talk to them, what are your concerns? Well, some of them, their principals actually get on to them for being out of the classroom so much. Well, they've got to be out of the class. I mean, it's an investment. And so one of the things we want to do is supplement districts to let them hire substitutes or to do other things to help us get more teachers in the pipeline.
Dr. Mackey, question for you.
Yes, sir.
This is the year the 3rd grade retention goes into effect, right?
Yes, sir.
So I know we don't know the numbers yet. I know that whatever the number is, we'll have summer camps to mitigate that number. But
yes, sir.
We're potentially going to be looking at 20% retention rate coming up.
Yes, sir.
Are we ready for that?
Well, I can't tell you that for sure. I hope so. So one of the things, remember, the number of students won't change. We have had this conversation with superintendents. Even if, God forbid, if you retained 20% of your third graders and they did not move on to fourth grade, you still have the same number of students. It's just they're in a different grade level. So you have to think about teacher assignments. We will have schools that will have to move a teacher from fourth grade to third grade. It may not be a specific individual, but they'll have to move a unit from third grade to fourth grade down to third grade to cover that. If I were a principal again and I had any extra like Title I funds, I would probably try to even add another teacher so that I can get my class ratio in third grade as low as possible. So we're talking about those kind of things, but
and hopefully by now the parents understand that's where we are, right?
I hope so. I promise you, we have done extensive work with parents. We send, obviously we depend on the schools to communicate directly with their parents, but our Alabama Reading Initiative group has done some really good parent work this year and last year. And, I hear that schools are having workshops. They're bringing parents in and saying, this is real. This is where you have to be.
And my last question, then
yes,
I'll see if anybody says, is that we had put in the budget some money for auxiliary teachers, and we did that, I guess, that took effect after the school year started. Were we able to find a network of auxiliary teachers? Was that successful appropriation?
Mr. Chairman, I might get back with you on the exact numbers, but it was not as successful as we had hoped. And so we targeted that money that you gave us about $5 million. We specifically focused it on the governor's turnaround schools, which you'll see are in the budget again. And unfortunately, in those schools, and we had other schools that do have some success with those teachers, but we had a hard time really identifying the auxiliary teachers to get in there. I don't want to give up on that. I think part of that is going to take some time because, that's in this year's budget, but it's not been as successful as we had hoped.
Any other questions by any committee members? Senator Singleton?
Yes, sir.
Dr. Mackey, first of all, I want to thank you for that $22 million you're looking at for those struggling readers. Number one, we had a little crisis called a pandemic, and those kids who are now struggling reading in middle school were third, fourth, fifth, and sixth graders at that time, and now they're in middle school and beyond.
Yes.
And my superintendents are telling me they're beginning to see that struggle reader there, and I appreciate you at least having the vision to see that. The other piece that I want to say is that far too many of our babies are being killed in our school systems or they're being injured in our school systems, and I just don't see the urgency of the cry for school safety. It sounds like we're just being real cavalier about it. Yeah, we'll get SROs and we'll put up something, and nobody's crying out about the fact that we're getting babies that are being killed or are being shot at our school system or on our school grounds. We as a legislature don't see it as an urgency. We make guns more accessible for everybody to get. I don't hear the school boards crying out. I just think that we got to be more intentional about the children who are in our school system and making sure that they're safe. Thank you.
Yes, sir. I appreciate that.
Any comments? Chairman Orr, do you have anything? Any other comments? Thank you, Dr. Mackey, for your presentation. And
thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just, I know you're closing up. Just so I have Logan Searcy with me, who is the new Executive Director of the Charter School Commission. She also has one or two slides. They'd ask her about coming if you want that. Now, I talked to her ahead of time, and she said, if they don't get to my slides, I will not be offended. And she said she'd come back another day, but I wanted to make sure you knew she was here.
I think it'd be better. We'd like to spend some time. I know our committee in the House would like to have a presentation, so let's get with Ms. Cheeks.
Can I let her just stand, be recognized? There she is, so you'll know who she is.
Okay. Yeah, we look forward. We definitely want to have that dialogue.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. We adjourn.